Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I'm here to do my May wrap-up. I read a grand total of 7 books and 2 graphic novels in the month of May, so let's just jump in and get started. The first book that I read in the month of May was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Doughty. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes is a non-fiction book that is written by a woman who spent 6 years working in a crematory. Basically, the book talks a lot about all of the rituals that we place around death, especially regarding American culture, as well as on a wider global scale, how death is thought of and dealt with in other countries all over the world. And it talks just a lot about the general funeral industry in America, and about the ways that that funeral industry is sort of dishonest when it comes to how we deal with death. This was a completely fascinating book. I absolutely loved reading it. I feel like I definitely haven't read enough nonfiction yet this year, because reading this was like, oh yeah, I really enjoy reading this kind of thing as well as reading fiction. This book does get really morbid at times. This woman did work in a crematory, and she had a lot of she describes everything in great detail. In particular, she describes an experience she had when she was about 8 years old, and it was the first time she ever witnessed a death, and she watched someone die in front of her, and that was brutal to read about. This book also covers deaths of people of all ages. That means babies to the elderly, and that can sometimes be difficult to read as well. But that is my only warning going in, because I think that this book covered super important topics. It was fascinating. It revealed so much about the funeral industry and the culture of death in America, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I personally have a hard time giving a nonfiction book over 4 stars, because as much as I find them informative and wonderful, I just can't connect to them as much because there isn't really a character to connect to. So I did give this book 4 out of 5 stars, but that is not like a bad thing, like I found something wrong with it. It's just like me personally, I can't get quite as passionate about nonfiction books, so a 4 star for a nonfiction book for me is super high praise, and I absolutely loved this book. The next book that I read in the month of May was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Yes, I finally started reading the Grisha trilogy. My trek has begun. I know that I don't need to read the Grisha trilogy in order to read Six of Crows, but it's just something that I decided I wanted to do. Although I've gotta say, unfortunately, that this book didn't super impress me. Basically, this book takes place in a fantastical version of Russia, and it follows our lead character, Alina. In this world, there are people who have magic, and those people are called Grisha. Alina is a girl who is in the army because there is this dark void that has cut her world off from the ocean, and so her world is having a very difficult time reaching the ocean and reaching trade, and so they are trying to fight through this void thing in order to get to water. And that is when it is revealed that Alina might be Grisha as well. I did not know a whole lot going into this book. I just knew it was a fantasy book with Russian influences, and my main problem with this book is that I just don't think it was that original. This did have some original elements to it, but some of the book felt like a fairly paint-by-numbers young adult fantasy book. You've got your lead character who is the chosen one, and she's an orphan, obviously. She's been in love with her best friend for years, but hasn't told him, and then all of a sudden a brooding bad boy type character appears, and she feels kind of attracted to him instead. So those were my technical issues with the book. It just felt like I'd read it 100 times before. The way the world was described is super interesting. I've heard people complain that it was hard to jump into this book because not a lot is explained, but I didn't personally experience that. I felt like I was dropped in, but everything was explained in a way fairly quickly. I knew what was happening, I understood the world, but unfortunately I had to give this book a 3.5-ish stars. It was good, but it just wasn't impressive or memorable. The next book that I read in the month of May was Can't Wait to Get to Heaven by Fannie Flagg. This is a book that I would technically define as chick lit. I don't really love that term, but that is kind of what this is. It is technically part of a companion series. It would be the 3rd in a series, which I did not know until I started reading it, but I don't think you need to read the other 2. I picked up the world and the characters fairly quickly, so I don't really feel you need to find the other 2. This book takes place in a town called Elmwood Springs in Missouri, and it's a small town, and this old woman who everyone in town loves falls off her ladder and is in the hospital. And basically it is about everyone in town processing this and wondering what life is truly about, because everyone loved this old woman and she's like an amazing person in general, and she just kind of inspires everyone to think about their lives. The book was really strange to get started, but I'll admit by the end I loved every character enough that I cried little teeny tiny tears when I finished it. It was weird, but it was sweet, and Eleanor, who is the old woman, is just a wonderful, wonderful person, and hearing about all the things that she's done over her whole life was just a wonderful thing to read about. So I don't know, like, I thoroughly enjoyed the happiness factor of this book. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars because I thought it was really fun, it was cute the way it was written, I liked all the characters, and I liked the journey that they went on. It's nowhere near as good as Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, but I wasn't expecting that going in. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely did enjoy it. Actually, a little bit more than I expected. Next book that I want to talk about is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. In my May TBR, I asked people to choose between 2 Morgan Matson books that I could read this month. I said that I could read Since You've Been Gone or Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, since those are the 2 books I owned. It was fairly even for a while, and then Since You've Been Gone just leapt forward, so I read that one. This is a YA contemporary, and it is about this girl, and she's really reserved and shy, and her best friend is the complete opposite. And then summer starts, and all of a sudden the best friend, Sloane, is missing. The lead character, Emily, doesn't really know what to do now that her best friend is gone, and then all of a sudden she receives a list from Sloane. And she can't find Sloane at all, but she has this list of things to do, things she would never normally do without Sloane there, and she decides that she will be able to make Sloane come back if she can check off all of these things on this crazy bucket list. I really wanted to love this book, and I really wanted to love Morgan Matson because BookTube speaks of her so highly, but unfortunately I just couldn't fall in love with this book. My main problem, and it was resolved slightly by the end, was that Sloane came off as such a manic pixie dream girl in a weird way, since she was the best friend and not the love interest, but it was very strange the way she was written as such a manic pixie dream girl. And my other problem was that for the entire book, I could not figure out for the life of me why Emily would ever be friends with Sloane. It seemed like Sloane was not a great friend a lot of the time, and the way that she made Emily feel about herself was just, I don't know, I didn't love it. Like, I understand, believe me, the girl with low self-esteem in high school trying to attach herself to more outgoing people, but Sloane just kind of made Emily feel terrible about herself, and I didn't love that. And this book had a trope in it that I hate, and I don't know why. Every romance in YA contemporary seems to need to have this trope. I'm not going to say what it is because it's a spoiler, but it's the same problem I had with Anna and the French Kiss and their relationship, and that really super bothered me. So I liked the resolution in this book. I didn't really care that much about the romance. I don't know. It was fine. I wound up giving it a 3.5 stars. It's a fairly forgettable 3.5 from me, unfortunately. I still have Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, and I'm still gonna read it, but I just don't know if Morgan Matson's gonna work out for me. Okay, the next book I read, I'm gonna try to restrain myself slightly, but that is Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. You guys have heard me talk about this book so many times that I just want you to know that all of the excitement that I had built up for this book, I was not disappointed. So I received this ARC as part of a giveaway. This book does not come out until November, and I'm very, very sorry about that because I want everyone to have it right now. I will be doing a full review of this book, but I'm not going to post it for a couple of months just so we can get slightly closer to the release date. Basically, this book follows a girl named Princess Denna, and she has been betrothed to the prince of a foreign kingdom for much of her life, and when she goes and she meets him, she doesn't fall in love with him, she falls in love with his sister instead. This book is about queer princesses. Denna also has a magical ability, which is bad because in the kingdom that she is going to live in now that she's marrying this prince, they don't like magic. So that's also an issue, but it was beautiful. I loved it so much. Look at how many pink tabs I have. Pink are for like romantic sweet moments. I ran out of my pink tabs at the beginning and had to switch to a different kind of pink tab. This book was great. I loved it. I've seen like not that many people have it. I saw someone complain about insta-love, but I don't think it was insta-love. I think it was built up effectively, and it was fantastic. And there will be a full review eventually, and yeah, this was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't like the perfect book, and there were issues that I had with it, but I just could not bring myself to be that critical of this book, because this is a book that I have wanted to exist for so long, and it does. and it gave me what I wanted it to. So I was a little easier on it than I might have been with a couple of other books, but I don't think I was that much easier on it. It was fantastic. 4.5 stars. Ah! The next thing that I read in May was Paper Girls, and this is by Bryan K. Vaughn, Cliff Chang, Matt Wilson, and Jared K. Fletcher. This is a trade paperback of the first 5 issues of Paper Girls. I don't think I'm going to be picking up the next issue of this. When I bought it, I did not realize that it was 4 male creators writing a female-driven comic story, and that kind of irks me when that happens. I want female creators involved if you're going to have a female-led story. That's just kind of my thing. Basically, this series is about these 4 girls. They are these 12-year-old paper girls in the late 80s, I believe, and then one morning on their paper route, they find something that they shouldn't have found and get thrown into this crazy sci-fi adventure. I felt like the story was a bit confusing, a bit all over the place. I didn't really feel, like, interested in the characters. I didn't really feel like they were well-rounded. The art is beautiful, I will say that. I thought that the colors in general were beautiful to look at, and I appreciated that element, but it got to the end and there's like this huge cliffhanger and you're like, what? And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. So, like, I liked a lot of elements of it, but it's just not something I see myself continuing, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read was Why We Broke Up, and this is by Daniel Handler and Maira Kalman. Maira Kalman is the one who did the illustrations in this book. I'm going to leave my Goodreads review down below so you can go and check it out, but basically I was just really disappointed by this book. Basically, this book, each chapter kind of begins with a picture of something that is going into a breakup box, and the girl who's writing the story is writing a letter to her ex-boyfriend explaining all the reasons why they broke up and giving all of his stuff back to him. I had a lot of issues with this book. I thought that the main character who was writing the letter was pretentious, and I didn't like her. I didn't like any of the friends. I didn't like the boyfriend, and for the number of pages that are in this book, I could not tell you why they were together in the first place. Also, 350 pages is a long letter to write considering how long this relationship was actually happening. It was a short relationship. It doesn't make any sense. I just had way too many issues with it. I did give this book 2 stars out of 5. I reserve my 1-star ratings for if a book, like, physically makes me angry, like I have to storm around and get furious. That's the only books I'll give 1 star to, and this book didn't make me mad, it just kind of made me disappointed. So yeah, you can read my Goodreads review, but this was just a huge disappointment for me, which was so sad because this is a beautiful book. Like, everything about this book, the end pages, the cover without the dust jacket on is beautiful, and I'm so sad that I didn't like it. Next up is a book I finished last night. And it is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the first book in a trilogy. This book is out, the second book is out, but the last book is not out yet. We just got a cover reveal and it's gorgeous. But this book takes place in a world where there is not 1 London, but there are 4, technically. There is Grey London, which I would say is the London that is closest to our own, and it doesn't really have magic. Then there's Red London, which is thriving and full of magic, and it's just kind of a part of life, and it's glorious and beautiful. And there is White London, which magic has become like a brutal thing and everything's kind of fading away and it's this really awful place, basically. And then there's Black London, which has not existed for so long that it's basically become a thing of stories. And our lead character is a guy named Kel, and he is one of only 2 people who can move between these Londons. His job is just kind of to take correspondences between the rulers of each individual London, just so they can talk to each other, and the other lead-ish character in this story is a girl named Delilah Bard, and I'm in love with her. I love her so much. I don't know how to speak coherently about this book. I just want to shout, I love it so much. I love it so much. I love it so much. I was flipping through the pages frantically last night, and I finished it, and I was furious that I didn't have the second book in my hand at that moment to just open it and start again. Kel is an amazing character. Lila, as I've mentioned, I love her passionately. Rye is everything about this book was perfect. That's not even true. There were like issues I had with it going in, but the overall wonderfulness of this book erased everything that I was like, okay, remember that there are a few things that you don't love about this book. All of that was gone by the time I finished it, and I was like, it was perfection, 5 stars! So yeah, Like, this book might have had issues, but I don't even care. It was amazing. It was wonderful. I want the second book. I'm gonna meet V.E. Schwab, hopefully in July, and I'm just gonna, like, throw myself across whatever table she's signing on and being like, thank you, this book was so good. Okay, I've pulled myself together again. I'm sorry. I really loved that book. The final thing that I read in May, I also finished last night because it was a graphic novel, and that is Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life by Bryan Lee O'Malley. I finished this in like an hour last night just because this was also on my TBR. I really wanted to check off almost everything on my TBR. I missed one book on my TBR, so yeah. This is book 4 in the Scott Pilgrim series. I don't really know. It's a weird series. If you've seen the movie, the movie's a really, really faithful adaptation of these graphic novels. But unfortunately, this was my least favorite of the Scott Pilgrim graphic novels so far. This book featured my least favorite of the X's because I don't like how they are handled at all. I also understood Scott and Ramona's relationship in this one the least, and it tried to do way too many things. There was just way too much going on. So while I have really enjoyed the Scott Pilgrim series up to this point, this most recent one that I've read was a huge letdown for me, and I had to give it 2.5 out of 5 stars, which is super sad, because I really like Scott Pilgrim. Okay guys, there you go. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of May. I'm feeling pretty good about the books that I read. I think I'm pretty happy with it. I feel better about my reading month this month than I have in the past few months. I've just felt like I haven't been enjoying quite as many books recently, and this month was great. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that I read. Obviously, I had 2 that I really didn't like, but, like, my love for Darker Shaded Magic and A Fire and Stars just kind of blotted all the rest of that out. In the comments below, please let me know what your favorite book was that you read in the month of May. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!